All right, good evening and welcome to the Village of Flossmoor as a meeting for the mayor and the board of trustees. Today is Monday, November 3rd. Just a couple of reminders before we get started. This meeting is being streamed via Zoom for the convenience of those who are unable to make it in person. Also, when it's time for public comment, I will call from the sign-in sheet. We ask that if you wish to make a public comment, you please come to the podium, you introduce yourself with your name and your address, that you act with decorum, that you also limit your comments to the public body at large and not a single member of staff, and also limit your comments to 5 minutes per person for a total public comment time of 30 minutes. The time is 7:03. Clerk Porter, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Daggett.
Here.
Trustee Dorsey.
Here.
Trustee Lofton.
Here.
Trustee Mitros.
Here.
Trustee Mustafa.
Here.
Trustee Rogers. And Mayor Nelson.
Present, thank you so much. We have a quorum. And now that we have the quorum established, I'm going to ask for a motion to permit Trustee Rogers to participate remotely in tonight's meeting.
So move.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Do we call roll on that one then? Village Attorney? That sounds good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Welcome to the meeting, Trustee Rogers, and thank you so much. She's at a work-related conference, and we really appreciate her making time for tonight's discussion. I think some of these issues are near and dear to her heart, so I appreciate her being here to offer her perspective. All right, we don't have any recognitions or appointments, so I'm going to start from the sign-in sheet. First up, we have Mr. Warren Engelberg. Welcome. Good evening.
My name's Warren Engelberg. I live in Flossmoor. I want to continue what I started last time we were here. Reform and revolution. The Great Depression, the 1930s, remember, was a period of strife. It was not about masters and slaves because that problem had been ended in large part by the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation. No, the 1930s was about a great struggle between employers, or capitalists, if you like, and employees or workers, if you like, maybe even if you don't like. The problem was that the capitalists who hired workers fired them as well. And they fired lots of them, starting in the Great Crash of 1929. And by 1933, the unemployment rate in the country was 25%, 5 or 6 times what it is now. And in that crisis, with desperate, hungry, unemployed people, let's remember in the early 1930s, there was no such thing as unemployment compensation. There was nothing taking care of elderly people kicked out of their jobs, and there wasn't Social Security. It was a really difficult time. And a lot of people want to change, a polite way of saying, we want out of the misery, the unemployment, the suffering, and the poverty that was everywhere across the country, from Washington to Florida, and from California to Maine, and everywhere in between. And here come the reformers and the revolutionaries. The reformers said there ought to be unemployment compensation. We ought to do something for unemployed people who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. The whole system broke down. Their work wasn't efficient. Their behavior wasn't inappropriate. They were working one day as well as they were the next, except they were fired. And we ought to help them, and we ought to have unemployment compensation. The government should help unemployed people. That's a reform. And we should have a minimum wage. It shouldn't be possible for a man or a woman to work all those hours and get paid so little that they can't live. So there has to be a minimum. The employers won't recognize a minimum. They always want to push it down anyway. So the government has to step in. Notice the reformers turned to the government, which eventually said there should be a Social Security system. Then who were the revolutionaries? Well, in the 1930s, the revolutionaries were the ones who said, and this was their best argument, the solution isn't fixing it, because even if you fix it, if you have a minimum wage, if you have unemployment compensation, if you have Social Security, when you get it from the employer by asking for it, then you leave the employer in the position to take it back when and if they can. What's needed, here we go now, is a revolutionary situation, something that could not be undone afterwards. And what would that be? Well, in those days, they all pointed to the Soviet Union, which had had a revolution back in 1917, and that was only 13 years before the 1930s, so it was in everyone's mind. We don't want the government to tell corporations they should pay a minimum wage because they'll get out of it. We want government to take over, and that became the revolutionary idea. The government would take over the enterprise to make sure that people were not unemployed, to guarantee a job, to guarantee a minimum wage so that no one would ever again be a poverty-stricken person, no one, and to make sure there was a pension for everybody and so on. The government would come in, and that was a revolutionary situation. And the people who advocated it in those days were mostly people in the American Communist Party and in the more radical of the two socialist parties. At the height of the Great Depression, all of those people worked with the unions and began to push, some for the reforms and some for the revolutionary solution. And who did they push? They pushed the president, at that time, Franklin Roosevelt, just like the anti-slave reformers and revolutionaries pushed Abraham Lincoln. But Roosevelt went the reformist route, not the revolutionary. He established unemployment compensation, he established Social Security, he established the minimum wage, all of which we didn't have before, and he went further. He established government jobs. 15 million Americans got good jobs working for the federal government, earning a good income. So they went the reformist route, but that meant the revolutionaries were pushed out. They were dismissed. Their proposals were not accepted, and what would they have proposed? They would have proposed the government takeover, if you like, the Soviet solution at that time. Next time, I'll take these two examples, slavery and the Great Depression, and apply them to the United States under Trump right now. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I have Mr. George Atkins. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have handouts. That's okay. Can I pass these?
Sure, if you could give them to the clerk, that'd be great on the end. Thank you.
Very good. All right. I'll wait for those to get passed out. Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. My name is George Atkins, and I live at 3420 198th Street. My wife and I grew up in the south suburbs, and almost 20 years ago, after separating from the Air Force, we decided to build a home here in Flossmoor. We raised two adult children, and while I've considered downsizing now that we've approaching retirement, we love this community and we plan to retire here in Flossmoor. I recently made a FOIA request to obtain the residency data for all Flossmoor employees. I did this because I think it's important that our village employees have what I'll call shared values. Our community has always prided itself on being more than a place to work. It's a place where we invest in one another. And I think, I'll say think, when our employees live here, they see the same roads, parks, and schools as our residents. They don't just serve the community, they are the community. The data was a bit shocking that 70% of the employees live outside of a 5-mile radius of Flossmoor, and 30% live in Indiana. So when we think about a 5-mile radius of Flossmoor, that's Flossmoor, Homewood, Olympia Fields, Chicago Heights, Glenwood, Country Club Hills, Hazel Crest, Park Forest, Matson, South Holland, and Harvey. Now, if we think outside of 5 miles, that's Tinley Park, Mokina, New Lenox, Chicago, Beecher, Valparaiso, Indiana, and Cedar Park. That's also in Indiana. And I understand that life circumstances change, but I think as more of our workforce live outside the village, I think we risk losing some of the daily live connection that deepens why we do what we do, what we call a sense of purpose. So it's not about where you sleep at night. It's about maintaining that personal stake in our community's success. So here's the leap. So perhaps I'm making a faulty assumption that for our village employees to have a civic connection, they must live in Flossmoor as well. But that being said, I think it warrants discussion, and that's why I'm here tonight. So to the mayor and the board of trustees, I ask, what is your perspective on this topic?
Thank you so much. This is not a Q&A session. This is for public comment. If you have anything else to add, would definitely welcome you to add that at this time, but it's not a back and forth, sorry.
Understood. Thank you.
Sure.
Absolutely. The data at the top is still the same number of employees, so 119 employees. I ran the data two different ways. So the data at the top looks at solely proximity, within 5 miles and outside of 5 miles. The data at the bottom, same data, but looking at it in a different lens, within Flossmoor and within the state of Indiana. Awesome.
Thank you so much. And just on a personal note, our employees take great pride in the work they do here and the relationships they build. They work really hard to serve our residents. 24/7 are the services that we provide. So I'm quite proud of our workforce and what they do and the relationships that they built with our residents. But thank you for bringing this up.
Understood. Thank you.
Next, I have Mr. Graham Volkema. Did I say that right? I just know you as Graham. Welcome.
So I'll try to be brief. My name is Graham Balkma. I'm the owner of Good Speed Cycles in Homewood on 183rd Street. Learned that this meeting was about a little last minute. Learned it was about e-bikes and figuring out how to regulate that because it is an absolute explosion into my world, and I'm sure it's all of the reason you're talking about is because it's important. E-bikes for us in the last 5 years have grown exponentially, from kids at school to older people trying to stay active, people commuting. It's bringing a lot of new variety into my store in need of service. We sell, based on your day, most of our e-bikes are going to be class 1, 2, and 3, based on the packet that you've handed out. those are that's the vast majority of what bike shops are selling. That's the vast majority of what we see in the community. And those are going to be indistinguishable from a regular bicycle rolling past. You're not going to recognize it. But we're also seeing a ton of, um, faceless names show up that are selling, people buying stuff online that's arriving that's way outside of a normal bicycle experience. I'm sure that's where the concerns are coming from. And stuff, yeah, that's has a pair of pedals on it to be a bicycle, and it just isn't. Looking through your packet, it looks pretty pragmatic in terms of approach, looking what other communities are doing. I'm hoping that that same pragmatism goes through in looking at what you're going to regulate. Like Orland Park banning e-bikes outright, I think they just kind of didn't want to do the work because it's a complicated issue, and it's frustrating to deal with. But they're a huge part of mobility. It's getting more people out. It's a fewer cars on the road, which is an ease for traffic. It's mobility, and however you choose to regulate it is not going to stop people from being able to purchase online and other places. And I would encourage you to do the work of understanding the differences between the classes and how they operate, and focus on safety in terms of relative to enforcement, and making a reasonable choice to progress forward to make a rule set that works for all users. I don't know that I have much more to add. I know one of my colleagues has already sent some information to at least to you. I don't know if we can share more with the board, but I don't know what else to add, but it's just, I'm curious to see where you guys land. And I'm hoping it's open-minded and practical. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Appreciate your time. Next, I have Mr. John Greven. Sure. Welcome, Ms. Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Lanita Johnson, and I live at 3010 Lawrence Crescent, Flossmoor, Illinois. I would like to address the board with 6 issues that I feel are very important to the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens. The first issue is the road condition in Heather Hill. I'm looking at asphalt that has been patched, or I call painted with tar, which really does decrease, in my opinion, the property values of the homes. And we need to have the roads paved thoroughly from Kedzie all the way past Heather Hill School. Thank you so much. And this needs to be done post haste. If all of those construction trucks are done, we need to please have the streets paved so that we may live an enjoyable life in the gym. That's GEM. Number 2, unleashed dogs and dog waste is a problem. I've experienced personally being attacked by a cane corso in my neighborhood. And there was a court date, and the hearing officer did fine the neighbors for that attack. However, my bruises were not, which were photographed, were not looked at. And the owners of that dog got off with half the sentence, which I feel they should have gotten a max of $750, but they weren't given that. Another occurrence, there was a dog, a large dog, that was roaming the streets. The owner was behind the dog. We called the Flossmoor police through the non-emergency number, and I want to thank them for showing up. So thank all of the police officers who come when we do call. After telling the owner of the dog to leash the dog, he did leash the dog. But the dog was allowed to roam through people's front yards, all the way from Highlands Park to Kedzie. And when the police officer told him he had to leash and he was giving him a verbal warning and next time he would get a citation, I thought that's good. But I feel like something else should have been done, including, asking the person, is there a rabies tag, or what's going on with this dog? Is a dog vaccinated? Why is he roaming like this? And the man who had the dog came back by my house and asked me, did I call the police? And I told him, yes, I did. And he just told me, I'm going to do what I got to do, and you're going to do what you got to do. And he walked off. So I don't think the verbal citation went very far. The other thing with the dog waste, on the sidewalks, there is lots of dog waste from people walking the dogs. And over the years that I've lived here, we have an increased number of dogs in our village. And I feel like we need to accommodate the dogs because I'm a dog owner. And the accommodations could include a poop station like they have at the Flossmoor Animal Hospital, if they were to put maybe one or two in Highlands Park so that dog waste could be thrown away properly. That would be a great asset. The other issue that I have is that residents and children are staying at the park past dusk, well into the night. And I feel like underage children should be at home and not at Highlands Park at night. Tonight, there was an officer there in the turnaround. Thank goodness again that he was there because there were children out on their bikes and their e-bikes. They ride through the park at night. Most recently, a neighbor of mine walked her dog, and no, this was in June, and there were condoms in the park. Okay, so we have those issues of, I guess, people enjoying the park a bit too much. The other item that I'd like to address is the need for more trash cans at Highlands Park. There are only two there. And this is a park that's the size of maybe 3 football fields long. And as people go from end to end, maybe an additional trash can would be helpful there to keep the paper waste down and other debris. The next item I'd like to present is whether or not we have a strict dawn to dusk curfew for residents who use the park. Could there be signage put out? Would that be of some help, like they have in the Chicago parks? And then the other issue I have here is the homeowners who do not have the adequate number of trees in their parkways. I do know that when we first moved here, if we didn't have a tree planted in so many feet away from another tree, we were cited and told, you must plant the trees. And now that's not being done. And it has been done for many years now. So I think we need to get back to the tight ordinances that we used to have and bring them up again. Make sure that we're keeping Flossmoor tight like it used to be. The last and final issue for me is the number of cars that are parked on the sidewalks in the driveway. In the wintertime, it's particularly hard to walk on the sidewalks if there's a car parked on the sidewalk. And this is becoming an issue because there's so many, I call multi-drivers in the homes in my neighborhood. So if there could be something done to enforce that. And I want to thank each and every one of you for listening to all of my notes here. And I hope that we can move on some of these items that were just brought up. And I yield back to John Grevin.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. In Heather Hill, which road specifically were you talking about? You mentioned road conditions in Heather Hill. Which road specifically?
Okay, we're looking at Cardinal Court where we had the main breaks. We're looking at, I believe the other court is Pheasant. And then down Lawrence Crescent from Patricia Lane all the way through to Heather Hill School. There are so many patched works and so many lines that it just looks horrible. And we have new residents who've moved in who've invested thousands and thousands of dollars into the new homes there. And it just looks does not look bad, does not present a good picture at all.
Okay, thank you so much. So the tar that you see, that's crack sealing, and
Yes.
I understand you don't like the look of it, but what it does is it extends the useful life of our roads for up to another 7 years, and we have a backlog of roads that need to be resurfaced. Everything is ranked by a PASER rating from 0 to 10. So we're working to get as many grants for capital projects that we have so that we can free up some of our local money to go after the roads. We've got some great news coming at us about another grant that we were just awarded, which will free up some more money to put towards roads. So
Well,
help
thank you for that
help
information,
is
and
on the way.
I'm glad to hear it. It's just that that street, Lawrence Crescent, is a busy street.
Yep.
And when you look at the number of cars that drive past 25 miles an hour down that street, we do need some speed bumps while we're fixing up the roads, because it's really bad. Yesterday, there were two bucks that crossed the street with a doe. And minutes before that and minutes after that, someone could have run into one of those does driving at the 30 and 40 mile an hour that they go now. But thanks for that information regarding, the grants and that you're working on fixing those roads. And it's still aesthetically not my cup of tea,
I know.
but thank you.
And then you had a lot of comments that relate to the park district. So what I'm going to do is relay those messages to the park district to see if there's anything that they can do to help. And then let's see what else. Unleashed dogs. Chief Estelle is here. Any comments or concerns? Call our police department. They're wonderful. And I think that's it.
Okay.
Can I, how's
Excuse
Henry doing? Good?
Oh, you know what? He's doing so much
Good.
better.
Tell him I said hi.
I will do that. Thank
I'm
you so
Tell
much.
Henry
concerned-
we all say hi.
I'm
I will.
concerned about the dog attack, though. And who reduced the fine? Where did a
Well-
reduction come from? Because a dog attack, the dog should be labeled a dangerous dog at some point. Did it get classified as a dangerous dog? Because then there's a whole new set of rules that they have to abide by if this dog attacks someone.
No, the hearing officer here at Flossmoor the night when I came did not say he would assign this dog as a dangerous dog. He said that my injury did not warrant the maximum fine because I didn't go to a doctor. And I told him, being a registered nurse and someone who can self-medicate, I called my doctor, and there's telehealth. If you don't feel you have a fracture, but you've got a large hematoma on your hip, that is an injury. And I was kind of like brushed aside on that. But yes, so there's a record of it. And if you want to look into it, I think you should.
Well, any dog attack's a serious thing. I don't think that we should
Mhm.
ignore that. And I don't think we should be reducing in our adjudication court fines for a dog attack. So I think that's something we should look into.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Johnson.
All right, I'll give Henry your
Can I
regards.
just-
Okay, thank you.
That's
Sure.
that.
Village
So,
manager.
just to clarify, our adjudicator would not determine whether a dog was dangerous or vicious. That actually goes through Cook County. So the dog bite gets reported to Cook County, and then Cook County keeps track of that information and then determines whether the dog is dangerous or vicious. So that doesn't happen at the local court level,
Okay,
reports
but
it?
just
our police department.
Did they report
just
this?
so you know, I was walking on the street at Heather Hill Circle with my dog on a leash. This dog came from behind the owner's home. It was a cane corso, which can weigh up to 150 or 180 pounds, who came after me. I was knocked down twice, okay? Finally, the homeowner came out and called the dog, Dax, okay? And the dog came back. But that dog was out there on me and my little puppy for at least 3 minutes. And I screamed fire, everything I could. And finally, they came out very concerned and offered to take me home, which they did. And when I got home, my daughter was coming to get me, and they had the conversation. I went inside. I was just such a mess. But they let the dog out at night just to roam in their backyard.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Next, I have Miss Cherie Red Jones. Welcome. Oh, she went over her time. She used your 5 minutes. You yielded to Miss Johnson. Oh, we're almost to the end. Let me see if there's time.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Cherie Red Jones. I live at 2939 Bobolink. Um, I am here also about the e-bike situation. I don't know how far you guys are going to go with it, but I just wanted to, say a little bit about it. I encourage you guys to think of the children as well. I know we have a lot of adults, but there are a lot of young families that are moving in that have children who want to go out and enjoy being in the community as well. So, and if they're not able to do that, you have the kids not wanting to go outside. They sit in the house and they play video games, and we really want them to get outside. So if you guys continue to regulate outside for them, it's nothing for them to do. And e-bikes, like the gentleman said, is becoming popular. It's actually getting kids outside, and they're going to pick up their friends and having, even for my son, he's 12 and he's 13. He just turned 13, and he got one for his birthday. And I waited purposefully until he was 13 to get him one, made sure that he had his helmet as well, and told him that he's not allowed to ride alone and that he has to stay in the community. So the parents are trying to regulate things for their children too, but you also have drivers who speed through. There are hardly stop signs in our neighborhood. There's no yield signs. So some of the issues are not just the kids' problems. They're also, the fact that we don't have regulations for drivers as well. So we can't just put that on the children. So, like the gentleman said, I encourage you guys to also think about the safety issues that you guys can provide besides just totally taking things away from the children, because there's really no free any, and a lot of the parents too, when we put them in programs, we're paying for everything. We would love for our kids to go out and do free stuff as well, and that's one of the free things that they get to do and have fun. So unless you guys can come up with some things for them to do besides going to the library. And they're older kids, they want to be outside with their friends, but they actually want to have fun. And also, I heard about the parks too. Um, it gets dark earlier now. What are the kids going to do? I mean, they normally stay in the park, we said, from dusk to dawn. Now it gets dark at like 5:30. So you're going to tell them now they can't stay in the park when they used to stand in the park at 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock. Maybe there should be a time and not just from dusk till dawn. And then after that time, somebody should be there to properly get them out of the park and not um forcefully, because kids are rebellious, and when they're being told something nasty in a nasty way, they're going to respond in a nasty way. So I just encourage you guys to also think of kids, because we were all kids once. And when people took things away from us, how did we feel? You know, so that's it.
Thank you so much. And circling back to Mr. John Grieven. I'm sorry, I thought that you were yielding in terms of giving her all of your time. Mhm.
What Mrs. Johnson failed to mention, or not failed, but didn't mention, is we're both 41-year residents of this village. We were on Lawrence Crescent when there was nothing. We were the only two houses there. So we have seen the good and we have seen the not so good of the village. Lawrence Crescent is probably the most traveled non-thoroughfare street in the village. It is an abomination. What has been done to it, which seemed to coincide with some running event that you had here, is terrible. I'm ashamed to have people come over. I'm ashamed to live on the street. I hear what you have to say, but it's not good enough. It deserves better. It's gotten even more beat up by the trucks coming through the retention, to service the retention pond. It needs work. And I appreciate if you would reevaluate your position on that. Secondly, I do have some issues where I would like the board to address the police department to do more due diligence in the efforts of taking care of cars that are parked across village sidewalks that hinder walking. I would like them to be more diligent in their policing of trash cans that are left in public view for more than the allotted time. It seems that residents who move into the village for the benefits of the village choose just to ignore why they came here. And I would like to see more enforcement of that. And also that of commercial vehicles or vehicles that have commercial signage being left parked overnight in the village. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hate to put this on you, but if there is a commercial vehicle parked in a driveway overnight with commercial signage, if you could email info@flossmoor.org with an address, it's something that we can follow up on. And then also about cars blocking sidewalks, what can we do about that?
I would ask Chief Estelle to address that, please.
Be specific. I'm addressing my comments only to the Heather Hill area where I travel.
I understand. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Chief Estelle, is that something that we can follow up on? Right. Next, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there anything anybody would like to pull off for discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Porter, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Mustafa.
Yes.
Trustee Mitros.
Yes.
Trustee Lofton.
Yes.
Trustee Dorsey.
Yes.
Trustee Daggett.
Yes.
And Trustee Rogers.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. We don't have any formal reports of our commissions tonight, but I want to thank the Green Commission and all of our partners who helped out with Pumpkin Smash on Saturday. About 150 people went to that event for pumpkin recycling, and 2,000 pounds of pumpkin waste were saved from local landfills. So I consider that a good success. Next up is an action item. Can I please get a motion to approve consideration of a liquor license request for BP Tornado for a Class BW1 license?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And I do not see our business owners here tonight to to answer any questions. I'm not sure that there's much discussion on this, but I'll just run through the board and ask for their comments at this time, starting with Trustee Daggett.
Thank you. So I'm being a business owner, I'm definitely sensitive to a business wanting to maximize their ability to make profit. But in this situation, my boss is the community, and the community just doesn't want this. I've not gotten one person that said that they do. I've had multiple dozens of people tell me that they do not. So I have to do what my boss says. And in this one, it's a no.
Thank you. Trustee Rogers, any comments?
I think Trustee Daggett has said it all. I'm in agreement. I've gotten emails from community members and they don't want it. And so I'm going to vote a no in their favor.
Thank you. Trustee Mustafa.
I've heard from in writing and conversation from many residents. This is not a popular request and I do not support it. But I would like to ask a couple questions about process. For any classification or for any license, what is the village's procedure for revoking a license?
Village Manager Wachtel, do you want to address that?
So I think it would begin with whether there was a violation of local or state liquor license code that would have to come to our attention. And then I believe a hearing process would entail. Our attorney can speak more directly to that, but there would actually have to be some sort of violation or misuse of the license for that process to start.
Has this ever happened in the village?
Not in my time.
Okay. And does a liquor license live with the owner or with the business? For example, if the owner sells the business, do they have to reapply for a license?
Well, it all depends on the set of circumstances. If the business changes name, if the business changes um, use as far as how they would like to apply that liquor license with respect to consumption on or off premise. But typically there's been, I can think of cases where an owner would have to come back in and make application, a new owner.
Right, so my last question is, and I do understand, village manager, your explanation about violation, but who keeps track of violations or lack of compliance in order for the village to know that there's a possibility it should be revoked?
Well, that would be a citation under our local ordinance. And so that process would come through the citation process, and then it would come to the attention of the liquor commissioner, who is the mayor, and then that process would begin. Attorney Addison, do you have anything to add to that?
No, no, and then I'm going to add. Yes, I do have something to add. The village president serves as the local liquor commissioner and has the responsibility to go through the hearing process that is spelled out in your code based on the violations. And there can be revocation of liquor licenses going through that process.
Thank you very much for patiently hearing and answering. The reason I'm asking these questions is to emphasize how intentionally I feel a license should be approved, because the process to revoke, the process to track lack of compliance sounds arduous and could take a lot of time and may not be easy to administer. So for those reasons also, I would not approve this.
Thank you. Trustee Mitros.
I can't understand real. Also can't. Hard decisions that, not everyone's going to like. We've got two gas stations within a half a mile of each other. One of them has a liquor license. The other now that does not is asking just for the same treatment. And I don't have a good reason to say no. I mean, they should get the same application as the Meyer gas station. So I'm in favor of this. We've never had an issue that I know of with any liquor licensee. And I don't anticipate that we ever will.
Thank you. Trustee Lofton.
As much as I want to see our businesses thrive and be successful in Flossmoor, I, like Trustee Daggett, heard from my boss, some of whom are in the audience right now, and they simply don't like it, don't want it, don't need it. And so my interest at this point is to not be in favor of it. But the one thing that really stuck in my mind in the discussions with the owners is this would, in my mind, be a test case of the 20 locations that they own throughout the southern suburbs. And I clearly don't want to be that individual that says, yeah, we want you to look at this as a unit. And for that reason, I would have to say no.
Thank you. Trustee Dorsey.
I heard also that there was some concerns about, and this is from residents, and I do want to applaud the residents by the way they went about this, getting a petition, getting signatures, and making the phone calls and reaching out. I think that's what assists us in doing our job and the representation of the residents that we serve. But even during the presentation with the BP personnel, it just didn't rest well with me that this would be a particular business that I want to add additional alcohol. I also have to look at the square mile radius that we have in Flossmoor, and how many of I look at this like any other business. What we want an oil change station on every corner, right? How many do we need to actually service the population size that we have? And I think between that feeling of we have enough and the answers from the residents, my vote is no on this one as well.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'm sorry, would you mind if I added just a quick comment?
Trustee Daggett.
Yeah, so Jim, to your point, I understand that we already have someone in business doing that. From my perspective, that decision was made before I was on the board, and I probably wouldn't have approved it. So there's consistency from me on that. I just wanted, but I understand what you're saying is how do you limit one without the other?
It's more, it's further reaching. And how we're perceived as a village.
Sure.
So this is a slam dunk. If I were a business looking to come to Flossmoor, I'd have to reconsider what I'm thinking, because I just think this is not the right thing to do. So, but I'm one vote out of 6. So.
All right, if there's no other discussion, Clerk Porter, would you please call the roll?
Trustee Madros.
Yes.
Trustee Mustafa.
No.
Trustee Rogers.
No.
Trustee Daggett.
No.
Trustee Dorsey.
No.
Trustee Lofton.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you so much. Next up is a discussion on e-bikes and e-scooter regulations. Village Manager Wachtel is going to lead us off, and where's Assistant Village Manager Bogue? Where did he go? Am I not seeing him? My eyes are getting bad, but are they that bad? And Chief Carl Estelle, welcome.
Thank you. Tonight's discussion is an introductory discussion on this topic of e-bikes and e-scooters. There's some recent state legislation and with regard to the definition of both of these modes of transportation. And municipalities across the state are taking action within their own jurisdictional boundaries with decisions that the state legislation is allowing for municipalities to make with this legislation. And tonight, Chief Estelle and Assistant Manager Bogue, both of whom have attended some sessions on this material, are going to walk through those definitions, walk through the points of decisions that the board could make on this, and receive your feedback. No decision needs to be made this evening, but certainly if the board wishes to make a local law on this particular topic, we certainly could do so through amending our municipal code. And I think when it comes to enforcement, pay particular attention to that with respect to the Illinois Motor Vehicle Code versus our local adjudication process. And the gentleman this evening will be talking more about that in detail. So with that, I think we have everybody in place. I'll let Chief Estelle lead us off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Board of Trustees, and community members. Thanks for allowing me to be here tonight to conduct this presentation so that we may be able to begin a conversation about the use of e-bikes and e-scooters. Assistant Village Manager Bogue and Commander Filkins attend a professional development presentation on e-bikes and scooters. Mr. Bogue has also worked with our intergovernmental partners regarding e-bikes and scooters as well, in addition to other topics. These vehicles have been around for a while, but it appears as though We've seen them more frequently on the roads and on sidewalks and quite more often. Tonight, we just like to go over a few definitions, get a better understanding of the use of helmets, talk about e-bikes, talk about e-scooters and things like that, and really get your opinion and eventually your lead on what it is you'd like to see us do as a department. We'd also like to briefly look over some of the rules and ordinances from other municipalities. Since 2023, we've received 24 calls for service regarding e-bikes over the year. That number is nothing compared to the phone calls and the questions that I have had in person at community meetings and walking through the streets and just in all sorts of places. There's more questions. So those 24 calls for service since 2023, that doesn't begin to capture as much attention as it's starting to generate now. Some of you may know that in September in Arlington Heights, I'm sorry, there was a death of an individual who was on an e-bike. He had an accident and collided with a pickup truck. So we just think that it's a good time for us to start a conversation about e-bikes, the use of e-bikes, and get your opinion on it. Some of our objectives, we just like to be able to provide awareness of the current laws and provide clarifications on the use of low-speed gas bicycles, e-bikes, and e-scooters. We'd like to get direction from the Board of Trustees to create goals to increase safety, raise awareness, and provide consistent enforcement. So let's talk about electric-powered bicycles. An electric-powered bicycle is one that has an electric motor with less than 750 watts. Illinois has this broken down into 3 classes. Class 1 is a motor assisted, which means you have to pedal, but there's a motor that will assist you. That vehicle, that bike cannot go more than 20 miles an hour. At this time, there is no age constriction for the use of that vehicle. Class 2, this is a bicycle that has a motor that you can pedal or you don't have to pedal. You may have like a throttle or something like that on it, but it will also, that electric motor will also help kick in. It too cannot go over 20 miles an hour. And also that has no age restriction as well. Class 3 is a motor assisted that you have to pedal and the motor kicks in, and that bike cannot go over 28 miles an hour. For the state of Illinois, you have to be 16 years of older to ride or operate that. And just so you all know, at the time when the kids and the young adults are riding these bicycles or vehicles, we won't know the size of the motor, the 750 watts. We won't know that. It will only be if we have a reason to contact them and stop them. Each of these bicycles, they're supposed to have a label on it that'll depict if it's 750 watts or more. But from the naked eye, we will not be able to know what that is. E-bikes, the riding locations, as you know, you can ride them in bicycle lanes and bicycle paths, but you cannot ride them on the sidewalks. And I know we've had a lot of calls for service and a lot of questions about the individuals using these electronic bikes on sidewalks. When that occurs, it's not only a danger for the person riding the bike, but also the pedestrians who are walking and using the sidewalk to transportation for themselves. So the two do not go together. Age restrictions for the e-bikes, as I mentioned, for the class 1 and class 2, there are no age restrictions, but for the class 3, and don't forget, that's the bike that goes up to 28 miles an hour assisted by the electric motor, you do have to be 16 years of old to operate that bike, but as a passenger, you can be under the age of 16 as a passenger. Low speed powered scooters, we'll talk about that now. One of the things about the low speed power scooter, you all have seen them, they can only go and travel up to 10 miles an hour. But these scooters are allowed on the sidewalk. And one of the reasons is because 10 miles an hour is not as fast as one may think. But I do believe that, as I was speaking to Chief Kopech, there are some people who do make modifications because I've seen some scooters and I know they were moving faster than most people can run. And I'm not talking about Usain Bolt who can do 27 miles an hour. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about the average person. I do believe some of those scooters do go above 10 miles an hour. Also, you have to be 18 years of age to operate the scooter. When operating an electronic scooter, you cannot operate the scooter where the speed limit is greater than 35 miles an hour. It's mandatory if you're going to use the scooter at night, you have to have reflections on it or lights on it. It's mandatory that it has a brake so that it will stop and hold the scooter. And also the scooter must be always operating in a good operational condition. Local regulations for e-scooters. A lot of different entities such as the park district or owner of property, they can allow individuals to use scooters. And we'll use the park as an example. So if the park has a policy where they allow e-scooters to operate within the park, that rule or those parameters do not rotate over to the city or the village limits. So that's how it is currently. So that's something I wanted you to know. You may see them through the parks and things like that, but if you see them in parks, it's usually because they have permission to do so. But that does not mean that it does transfer over to the city limits. State of Illinois does not require either cyclists nor passengers to wear helmets. Some states, such as California, demand that all persons under the age of 18, whether on a bicycle or e-bike, they must wear a properly fitted helmet. State of Illinois, as I will repeat, does not have that. We do not require for our riders to wear helmets. Now we're going to go into some examples from other municipalities, and Mr. Bogue will take over from there.
One of the things about helmets that's interesting too is some municipalities have put their own rules on helmets. So both looking at our own research, we've seen home rule and non-home rule communities, even if they're not able to put some of those laws in. So we'll get to that at a later date. So we're going to go to the extreme and talk about some of these too. Orland Park is a home rule community. They outright banned e-bikes and e-scooters. Other communities that did this include Oak Lawn, Evergreen Park, I believe as well. This is just something we wanted to show you as one of the extremes of what's been going on around us. Palos Hills, which is a non-home rule community, you'll see that they don't have an age limit on any of their bikes for 16 and under, but what they do is they have a helmet requirement for 16 and under. So that is how one of the things they passed in their ordinance. Additionally, their ordinance has fees that they've worked on there. So, and we'll talk about why those fees would kind of work and how that would be structured for the village of Flossmoor. Part of this is actually to protect. Right now, if you have a class 3, for example, chief, and a police officer pulls over a kid when a class 3 and he's 12 years old, what would happen to him if they wanted to be cited?
Well, because that's state law, that's going to go before the state courts. And we just like to entertain the thought of us doing something for our local ordinances, therefore it would be handled here. As you all know, once these things enter state courts, and now it's part of a record. And we just think that we should be able to consider, or at least having a conversation to see if there's something that we can do so that we can control this and maintain this and be the operators and not judges, but just be the ones that care for and manage the situation without them going before a state court.
So in Palos Hills, their fines are based on the parental regulations. So it would be actually a fine against the parent if they see a kid doing something illegal on one of these e-bikes or against the village code or ordinance. Glen Ellen, this is where we talked about that scooter law that Chief just mentioned, that on the e-scooters, you can regulate where they go on different properties. So for example, in downtown Glen Ellen, you're not allowed to use your e-scooter, even if you're 18 and over. You have to walk it when you're in the downtown. You can walk it, you could ride on regular sidewalks around Glen Ellen, but because there's so many people in the downtown, they find it safer that you walk it once you're downtown, and that's part of the rules. I think everything else is regulated just the same as the state laws. Woodridge, they paying all e-bikes 1, 2, and 3, 16 years or older. So that's how they put theirs. Ban 750 watts. And when we start talking about the 750-watt ones, those are they look like dirt bikes, but they're electric dirt bikes. You've seen them probably around. You see them for sale. They can go anywhere between 30, 40, 50, even faster miles per hour. And that's pretty dangerous in general. Most people try to put those on private property only, and try to keep those off of village property, is what the consensus from these communities are so far. Deerfield, they kept all the state laws intact. The only thing that was different, for whatever reason, 15 and under are required to wear a helmet at all times. So they put a helmet requirement for 15 under, but had the state law stay the same. So that's just something interesting. And then there's Plainfield, which has e-bikes 1 and 2 are at 14 years of age. E-bikes 3 is regular at 16. And that's the biggest thing is they've said, okay, if you could drive an e-bike, if it's 1 or 2, if you're 14 or older, anything younger is against the ordinance. So that's just some of the variety that you're seeing. One of the things that we want to stress and why we're starting to talk about this, you might have gotten this in the memo, or I think as the manager's report or two, is that we're kind of left to do this from the state law because there's obvious gaps we're talking about here. And these have ramped up so fast without kind of the state telling us. Municipalities have to take this in their own hands. In the south suburbs, there's not many rules or regulations outside of Orland Park. And I'm pretty sure New Lenox and Frankfurt are looking at similar regulations to Orland Park, from where I saw from their sites as well, if they're not already implemented. So around us, there's not a lot of people who have this set up right now. We'll get into some of those intergovernmental things and who we've talked to close to home in our next couple slides. But for now, I'll turn it back over to Chief.
Thank you. We definitely don't want to prohibit children, kids, young adults, or older adults from having a good time and having fun out there. But the most important thing is the safety, not only their safety, but all the individuals who are here in Flossmoor as well. We just want everybody to be safe and for us to do what we can to make sure and ensure their safety. And some of the things that we would consider as far as education is we will produce and print materials for distributions at schools and in the community. We will post information online and on our website, make educational stops instead of enforcement stops, and enforce current and only according to state statute in Flossmoor Municipal Code. That's what Mr. Bo was talking about as far as parental responsibility. Whereas if we did make some of these stops, we can consider, instead of charging or trying to give a fine to a 13-year-old, it may be time to consider bringing a parent in, having a discussion with him or her or them. So this is just some of the things as far as education that we wanted to mention and include as well.
So on the intergovernmental considerations, when we started talking about this or discussing this internally, where I wanted to start was reaching out to the Park District and our school districts and the Village of Homewood, our next door neighbors. The Park District, as soon as I called the director there, Doug Bohm, he said, yes, we've been having lots of phone calls about this. People are complaining about these at our parks. They're complaining about these issues, and any recommendations we would provide or things that he would want to partner on, he would definitely do so. He also would come into a village board meeting and talk on this topic if he would want him to. I'll hold him to that. SD 161 discussed this with the superintendent there, and he's discussed it with his principals, and they have seen an uptick in usage. You're seeing these out there, outside their locked on their bike locks and everything else. And he just stressed, if you're going to do something here, if you're going to recommend something, if you're going to put something in, you have to enforce it. You have to have enforcement. You have to be able to push this at some point, because if you don't enforce it, then it doesn't change anything. So that's what Dr. Smith really wanted to drive home on that. HF 233, still waiting a response from them. We'll be following up with them again. And the Village of Homewood, going back to that real quick, the Village of Homewood, I've been in discussion with them as well, and they wanted to see where we kind of started with this. And that's not a bad idea, because what they're looking for is, so I'll give you a bad example. So Elk Grove and Schaumburg both did regulations on this. Elk Grove, I believe, it's one or the other, I'll get one of these ones wrong. Elk Grove has a law, on their ordinance, that requires you to have a driver's license to drive class 1, 2, 3. Okay. On the other side in Schaumburg, they require a helmet for class 1, 2, 3 at 16 years of age. So, and they're right next to each other. So if you go over the border, then you're violating an ordinance. And if you go over the border, you're violating an ordinance. We have a shared high school and a shared park district. So we better have this somewhat shared between the two communities if we're going to have any rules or regulations moving forward. So that's part of this, is that I'm making sure that we, in good discussion with them, but being honest with everyone here too, is this will only work is whatever education things we do, whatever ordinances we push forward, to make sure we have buy-in and some thought and conversation between the two communities. So back to Chief.
So what we like to talk about now, we like to just gather information or input from the board about interest in local ordinances for e-bike and e-scooter usage. Gather input from the board about interest in a local ordinance for helmet use. Gather input from the board about interest in local ordinances for prohibited vehicles, because right now we don't have anything in place for usage of dirt bikes, ATVs, and go-karts. So just to consider all of that and see if we're interested in doing anything about it.
So the next slide is a little different from what was in your packet. So we wanted to adjust it. So that's why I printed out a copy for each one of you to just as a point for discussion. So this is where we'll turn it over to the mayor to have this discussion. Chief and I will be up here and hopefully can answer any questions as they come up. And we'll start there. So turn it over. Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Thank you so much. Great presentation and great comparison. So I appreciate you digging through all that. It's really tough to be at the forefront of an issue with the state still in limbo on some things. And this was actually a more difficult conversation than I was anticipating when we first brought this up. But I too have heard lots of complaints about mostly kids who are misusing these e-bikes. There's a group of kiddos, and they look to be about Parker Junior High School age. I don't want to, no shade to Parker, but they look to be about that age. And they are downtown Flossmoor almost every day, piling 2 and 3 kids on these e-bikes. And they are whipping around the circle, treating it like it's their playground. Not only does that put them in a really dangerous situation, it puts other drivers in a dangerous situation. And heaven forbid something happened to any of them, it would be a tragedy. I don't see any kids wearing helmets on these things. Never seen a single kiddo going to school wearing any type of protection for their head either. So it really concerns me. But I think you're on the right path with education, making sure Christmas is coming. And this is probably going to be something that is on everybody's wish list, even though they are pretty wildly expensive in my mind, anywhere from 300 to 800 on up for a toy. But I think education at a local level through our partners in 233 and 161, and then on all of our channels, I think is a great way to handle it. I also think having local ordinances, that way we can hopefully gently have conversations with people rather than throwing the book at somebody. I think that's also a great way to handle it. And it seems like every week there's a new story about a kiddo somewhere in the country dying on an e-bike accident. And I just don't want that to happen here. So I'll go through the 3 main points, and maybe I'll just, you know what? We'll just take everything at once. So curious to hear the trustees' comments on whether or not we should implement local ordinances regarding e-scooters and e-bikes. Um, Should there be any restricted use of e-scooters on sidewalks in downtown? And then what, if any, age restrictions do we want to impose on e-scooters or e-bikes? Um, And then should the village consider a local ordinance for enforcement purposes? Which is something we talked about, not throwing the book at kids, trying to have these casual conversations with family members to help bring them along. And then also, do we want to have a local ordinance for prohibited vehicles? So one example, e-bikes over 750 watts. You can go onto walmart.com. I'm sure some parents will do it not knowing, and they'll buy an e-moto, which is what they're called. And those things go really fast. And those are the types of bikes that we really don't want a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old riding around in our streets. So should we have a local ordinance just downright banning them? Should the village also consider recommending helmet guidance in an ordinance? So if I could get some of your comments on all of those things, and I'll go around the circle. I'll start with Trustee Dorsey.
So I'll say I'm not in favor of a total ban, right? I think Orland, who did the total ban, that was a little bit overreach. I also confess I was one of those parents. My son was 13, and I'm certain he was one of the kids that souped his up, and it was supposed to be 10 to 12 miles an hour, and I'm certain it was 20. I'm absolutely certain. But I'm in favor of something like what Plainfield did. I think there should be, we should consider helmet rules. We should consider rules of anything over 10 miles an hour that shouldn't be on the sidewalk. There should be some age restrictions. There also should be some restrictions on not only age for when you have a passenger, but how many passengers and where the passengers will ride, right? So I think we're all on the right track of having to put something in place for the safety of our residents and for the safety of our children, but still allowing that ability for them to have access to these. I am in favor of doing it on a local level. I think whenever we can have some oversight instead of abiding by the state, I think our residents would want us to do that, right? I think, instead of saying, well, this is what state rule is, this is the penalty, I trust you guys, right? I trust the leadership within our village to handle this properly versus having it being handled on the outside incidents where they may have such a huge volume. Whatever the rule is, that's what the rule is and not the consideration. So if we're going down a list, yes, consideration of e-scooters on sidewalks. I think there should be some restrictions on that, definitely based upon the speed in which they can go. I think there should be some restrictions on number 2, on class 1 and 2, the age restrictions to that. I think, we don't want a 10-year-old on these. And then our local enforcement, I'm in favor of that as well. Did I hit everything?
Helmets, and what about
That's
prohibited vehicles?
Yeah, definitely in favor of helmet, a helmet law and restriction, and the what was the other the
Prohibited vehicles, so like
oh,
the
yes.
e-motos, the ones that are over 750
yes,
watts?
absolutely, yeah. If if I'm in favor of the ones that that's some level of restriction on the ones that don't go as fast, definitely there should be some level of restriction there as well.
Can I interject on one thing? And this goes to actually something that Trustee Mustafa brought up at the last meeting when we were talking about home rule in general. I'm kind of turn this over to Carl Otteson too. As we go through this and some of these recommendations that we're looking for, even if we have a consensus or we have a pretty good idea, we're going to have to check with our attorney because if you're a home rule community, you can change anything you want. But as a non-home rule community, we have some more restrictions here. And there are non-home rule communities that I've found that have helmet laws like Glencoe, and different places. Now that they might be illegal, but we don't know what we'll be able to do until we actually do some more research on that. But I just wanted to give everyone a warning on that as we're talking some of the things that are what home rule is and what how it factors into some of these conversations. Additionally, we'll be reaching out to our risk management company, IRMA, and any kind of recommendations that we have. So if we're looking at lowering it to 14 for those, because we're making that thing now and not the state, are we responsible if a 14-year-old dies in an accident or something like that? Is that now on us? We don't think it is. So our village attorney doesn't think so, and I'm very happy to hear that. But we want to make sure that we're checking with Irma to make sure that they have our back on that too. So this is a fluid conversation, but there's two of the two things there being risk management and our attorney's perspective. And as Carl, as we go through some of these, you can throw anything you want out there, and we'll. Thank you. Thanks, Trustee Dorsey.
And at a very least, I think even if the helmets aren't something that we could mandate, I think a strong recommendation.
Absolutely. And you made a good point, Mayor. This is the holiday season, and I can see this on the list. But even if just a message that goes out to the parents of, here's something for you to consider. Like let's help educate the parents too before we even get to a point of putting something in an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Daggett.
Yes, thank you. So one of the things that I really appreciate, Chief, is you saying that this is the start of a conversation. I always say that about 90 to 95% of what we do as trustees is just making sure the bills are paid and the lights are on and our employees are happy. And then the other 5 to 10%, we really got to slow down and think about it. And I think this is one of those situations where we really have to think about the impact of anything that we decide to set in place. I think it's really important that whatever we do put together reflects the needs of our community. We are a bicycling, walking community to the point where we have a high-end bike shop just to the neighbor who is very successful because these two communities utilize that resource. So I think at some level, my first consideration is always safety. Like, what should we be doing to make sure things are safe? Obviously, the downtown thing, that's the place where I've seen the most egregious behavior. And kids are kids. I would have, if I had one of these things when I was a kid, I would have been doing the same stinking things. And my parents would have whooped my behind for it. But I would have done it, and I put myself in danger because I know what I did on go-karts. So I think there's times where we have to be able to have the ability to make those stops. So the safety is a consideration, but I also think there are other things that we have to think about that could be produced by putting in these rules. So for instance, what I would hate to do is put an overburdened situation on our police officers, and now they're stopping 10-year-olds because they don't meet the letter of the law when they weren't doing anything unsafe. And now it's a bad interaction that we've had with the police in the community. And now a parent has to get involved, and that could get, I think that's a really slippery slope. So I think whatever we do, I think should be the least amount of regulation that addresses the safety needs and concerns of our community. Because I don't want to strap our police officers where, I just don't want that. I really do like the idea of making sure that whatever we do, we take over the enforcement of it from the state. I've seen nightmare situations where someone gets stopped for some small little thing. And, so I would like for us to be the judiciary of anything that we do put together. I do think that because of the prevalence of these things and some of those scooters, because I've looked into purchasing them, there's one on the market that does 68 miles per hour on a scooter, not a bike. And those are just wildly dangerous. The e-motos, my personal opinion is you should have an M license. You should have a motorcycle license because that's really what it is. It just has an electric motor instead of gas. But again, that's home rule issue versus what, I know that there's limitations. So I think with all of this stuff, making a snap decision on it, we have the potential to run into issues where we go, oh, shoot, we overdid that. And I know we can always walk some of that stuff back or add things later, but I just think it's important that whatever we do, we take the time to talk to experts. We have experts nearby on these types of bikes. So if we put something together, if Graham would be willing to put his 2 cents in, there's other people around that we could get their input on, like, hey, are we thinking right with this? Just using the resources that we have. I think education is a huge aspect of it. I think sometimes parents buy these things for the kids and they don't realize what can be done to them. Some of them, it's a software update to make them go faster. Like literally this model and that model and that model, the only difference is you unlock it. So I think parents don't realize that. So I think some education, if there's links to education that we can pass along, again, if we can't require helmets, making sure that there's a lot of conversation about here's your chances of surviving an accident at 20 miles an hour if you're not wearing a helmet and you hit your head on the concrete. It's very low. You're probably going to die. Having that education, I think, is important. And then it's up to the community and the parents and to make the right decision. So I know I'm saying a lot without not saying a lot, but I'm kind of doing that on purpose because I really think that this should be a bit of a slow roll on figuring out what actually is the things that we should be putting in place. I do absolutely think that dirt bikes, if it's not a licensed motorcycle, it shouldn't be on our roads anywhere. I've seen the guy doing the wheelies down Western Avenue, and he almost hit me when I was on a car, and I almost got hit by one when I was on a bike. So those, let's get rid of them. Problem is, when you try and pull them over, you can't catch a dirt bike, whatever. So I think with these things, if I'm to go down the list, should the village explore implementing local ordinances regarding e-scooters and e-bikes? I think the answer to that is yes, so that we're the ones that are controlling the outcome of any citation or stop or disciplinary action that needs to happen. Because I don't want to ruin some kid's life or have a mark on, because some of these kids I know, they're in extracurricular activities and they use these things to get home from school because their parents don't get home from school till 9 o'clock. I know of one situation, her mom's a nurse, and that's the safest way for her to get home at times. So I wouldn't want to regulate so much that we're preventing someone from having that opportunity. So should we have those ordinances? I think yes. What those ordinances should be and rules should be, I think we've got to take our time to make sure that they're right. Do we want to consider local ordinance against prohibiting vehicles banning their use on village property? I think the dirt bikes, ATVs, go-karts, those ones, yes. The e-scooters and the e-bikes, I think that's a bigger conversation. Should the village consider recommending helmet guidance in an ordinance? Recommendation, sure. But I don't want our police officers pulling a kid over who's 12 years old, didn't have a helmet on, and making it a big thing. Now, saying, hey, kid, you should have a helmet on, great. And maybe there's some grant where we can get helmets donated to, and we can, hey, there's free helmets. We have a helmet drive where now kids can come to the police department and there's a good positive interaction. They bring their e-bike up and they get a helmet and they get to meet the officers. I think there's ways to do this that are best for our community. And I think that's my concern with this is as we move forward, because I think we do need to move forward, that we do it in such a way where we're taking the time to make sure the rules we have on the books are the best for our community. And I think if we have that approach with this, I think we're going to come out with the right outcome. And we might have to touch it again a couple times, and that's fine. But I would hate to have a situation where, like you said, some of those municipalities, there's just no forethought on what's the outside impacts or the secondary impacts of putting these rules in place.
So as we might be drafting and going back and forth in the second conversation, just so we're clear as we're moving forward, right now you don't have a recommendation for age restrictions for 1 and 2.
For 1 and 2, no. I mean, for 3, honestly, I think you should have a driver's license, and really, I think you should have an M license for any motos. But for the 750 watt or bigger, I absolutely think you should probably be 16 or older, because they are reaching speeds of vehicles that you should know what you're doing. So I would be okay exploring that. But then there's the catch is, okay, we haven't had any rules. And now all these kids have these. And what do? We say your $1,800 that your parents saved up to get you your, like, 13th birthday big present. Now you can't use it anywhere. So what do we do with that? Right. So because they purchased that when we didn't have the rule in place. Now we put the rule in place and they just spent all this money. So that's to me, that's the places where it's like, how many people does that affect? What effect is that? I just think we have to be mindful about how we approach it, because it's going to have some impact on a lot of people, because they are already so prevalent. The technology went real quick. So I think, do I have any direction on what that looks like? No, I think that's the conversations we have to have. I think we have to start exploring what would that mean. If we said 16 years or older for one that's a 750 watt, because some of these 750 watt bikes, they look like a Kermit bike.
Well, 750 and watts would not be street legal for the village right now. That would be a citation, not on, would be a motor moving vehicle citation, not even a municipal citation. So anything above, we're looking at putting that local ordinance, so we're clear on that. Dirt bikes, ATVs, go-karts, that whole list is because there's no local ordinance right now. So at this point, we could still handle it in-house is what we're asking for on that. But those are already not street legal.
Okay.
So period. So we're looking for direction on 1 through 3. 3 has already got direction from the state, 16 and older.
Okay.
So we have that direction. Some people have beefed that up with a driver's license for that's something that we're not recommending that. We're just having that discussion, but you're looking for 1, 2, and 3. 750 is pretty, we're just looking for that ordinance in-house to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, in-house dealing with it so that we can kind of take the place of the judiciary side of it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that we should do that, because that gives us the ability for, you come to the hearing, the parents there, the parents are like, we've had discussions, and we can decide, that whoever is doing that adjudication can decide, no, okay, they get it. They understand. Hey, we're going to waive the fine. Don't ride in the street anymore, kid. Great. Where they may not get that if they go to Markham. Depends on the day and the judge. So I think doing what's best for our community, and that would be us being able to make that decision. So yeah, as far, so to clarify, so for the 1 and 2 on the e-bikes, age restrictions on those is what we're looking for.
That's one of the questions. Yeah. So right now there are no age restrictions from the state of Illinois. Municipalities have been adding age restrictions. Some of them have not. Some of them have required helmets. Some of them have made regulations regarding how many people can be on that bike and mess with that as well. All those things are conversations. So if you're not there yet on 1 and 2, that's just something we need to know.
And if
Yeah,
I
it's hard to say yes or no on on what ages, because I feel like now, should there be age restrictions? I think it's a discussion to have.
And I think that's all we're asking for.
Yeah.
Is there a consideration to have those
Yeah,
discussions, not a decision?
I think we should discuss all of this
Yeah.
stuff. Where do we land is the question. And that's where I think, what's the next step on this? Like, if we say, yeah, let's have the discussion, then what's the next step? Staff is going to have to spend a lot of time to come up with what they think. Police departments have to come up with, and I think that's where, let's talk to some professionals as a part of that, which you guys always do, and I know you do. But so yes, we should have the discussion. What do we end up falling on? I think that's where we've got to take our time to make sure we're right. So when we say, okay, we think this is it, we don't say, okay, let's pass that ordinance. We say, okay, we think this is it. All right, let's take another look at it. Let's get some more opinion on this, where we talk to Irma, we talk to the attorneys, we talk to police department or other police departments. Hey, you guys put these rules in place. How's the police department handling it? Has this been a headache, or is this working? So I know I'm taking a lot of time here, but I want to make sure that I am emphasizing that I think this needs to be a slow roll.
So another good example would be we use Deerfield as an example to the village board. The reason why we use them is their deputy police chief gave that presentation that when we went out to Metro Managers Luncheon for ILCMA. And one of the things they talked about was they haven't written a single ordinance violation yet. All they've done is public education, handing out pamphlets to kids, hey kid, come over here, blah, blah, blah. And then if it escalates, contacting their parents. They're doing everything that way, in a slow roll that way as well. So our police department in no way from what our conversations are looking to get people on this. We're just trying to be proactive on something that looks, and by the accounts we're getting from our governmental partners, could be very dangerous. So that's what we're looking for, is just that portion.
Yeah, and as long as the ordinances that we come up with that give them the freedom to do that, then that's great. Because eventually you're gonna have someone who's a scofflaw and they're just like, forget you, I'm doing it anyways. And those are the ones that we have to deal with, right? Because that's when it becomes a problem. One time you say something and they're good, like, they shouldn't get a $200 fine, right? It should be or 50 or whatever it is. So yeah, all of this, yes. The discussion should go forward on all points. I think what we roll out, we need to just make sure we take our time to make sure it's right, or as right as we can get, and then make adjustments as we go.
Should we, in advance of the holiday season, put out what current state law is and that we are considering additional measures?
So we've already started putting out that in the e-news as far as what the state law is, and we've come up with our own infographics that have been put out. We'll continue to put those out, and we'll push them down to our intergovernmentals as what the rules are as is. But anything I would think, and Bridget and Carl can opine on this too, is whenever we get direction from here, we would go into a draft ordinance, bring it back, and discuss that draft ordinance, which may or not be passed as we continue to work through stuff.
Sure.
So that would be the next step of the process.
Yeah, and I'm good with getting to that step and then looking at it and then having another discussion.
Thank you. Trustee Rogers.
Well, I have class 2 and class 3 bikes at my house. All of my boys have one, and my husband has an e-bike. And I've actually rode on the bike myself. They all have helmets. And the bikes are not cheap. So I'll start out by saying that there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood that already have, the majority are class 2 bikes, go up to about 20 miles an hour. Most of those kids are riding with helmets. Even my youngest son, he's 8, and he has a class 2 bike. But his is a small bike. Looks like it's the same height as his regular bike. And they all got it to ride to school. What I've noticed is that cars don't know how to react when kids are actually on the bikes. I actually was riding the bike with my boys, and I was riding as close to the curb as I possibly could. And the person in the car saw me riding and seemed like they were actually trying to run me into the grass. So I think that there needs to be education for everybody. I haven't had any issues with my boys riding their bikes, because we did, research before we bought it for them, and they've actually been riding it for quite some time now, since the summer up until now, going back and forth to school, to Homewood-Flossmoor, Parker, and Heather Hill. I just think that there does need to be more education. I mean, I have seen some kids without helmets, but to be honest, we don't have bike lanes. And, I think if we are going to at least look at the younger kids that are riding the bikes, and we don't want them on the sidewalks, we need to have some bike lanes, because it seems like there needs to be education for the drivers as well as the riders. And I've seen a lot of adults actually riding the bikes. One of my brothers actually has an e-bike, and he was ran off the road, and the people purposely did it. So I think you have, you know, some people that are actually being mischievous when they see folks, because there are a lot of adults that ride e-bikes, and they're not driving properly, and they purposely did this to him. He was riding, he's in his 50s, so I don't know what's to be said about that. But the kids, they're riding in the neighborhood. That's a bit different. He was on a major street when he was riding his e-bike, but the kids are typically in the community riding. Some are on scooters. I haven't seen any kids over 750. I do have one that's over 750. That's actually the e-bike that my husband has. And I would for sure recommend a helmet for that bike. But I don't think that folks know how to make the modifications on these bikes. I think that that would have to come with some skill, because to get those bikes going over the 28 or the 20 miles per hour, you would actually need to know what you're doing in order to do that. And I think some of the parents right now, if we did, ban some of these bikes, they would be upset, because like I said, the bikes they're not cheap. They range between 300, some of them into the thousands. Now, when it comes to the dirt bikes and things like that, those are different. That's, to me, a totally different topic that shouldn't be talked about with these e-bikes, because they do go much faster, and they, might require a driver's license. But I know a lot of the kids are utilizing these e-bikes to get back and forth to school. That's, like I said, that's the reason why my boys are riding it, and they range from the age of 15 down to 8. But they were all educated and taught the proper way of riding these bikes. So I'm a big fan of the education. I'm also a big fan of the helmets. I think it is a necessary thing, because with some of the roads that could cause just, I would say, general things that we typically see on regular bikes. I would still recommend a helmet anyways, because you would have to protect yourself from the people that are driving, as well as other people that are on these e-bikes. Um, and so I think the parents probably could utilize some education as well as the kids, but I don't know if I would ban the bikes, especially, like I said, for those who already have it. That would actually count for myself as well. Like I said, there's 4 already at my house, um, ranging from all the classes, and I think that people would need to be educated, in terms of, should we consider a local ordinance for enforcement purposes. I think we need to do more research, more education for the parents, and see what they're, see what the community members think about this as well, because whatever, like you said, whatever we do, it is going to impede on, I think, students getting back and forth, for what the parents mostly purchase those e-bikes for, and the investment that they've already put into it, because we did not have any ordinances in place before. But I think anything that we do moving forward, we do need to take those things into consideration. Safety, and as far as the downtown, I could see, folks needing to walk their bikes, because the sidewalks are narrow. It's not really meant for folks to be riding on the sidewalks and doing silly things down there. But again, those are kids, and I think if we have a conversation and educate those individuals regarding that, that might be something to look into. But I'm not really, I don't know, as far as banning it, that would, class 3, that's a different story. It goes a little faster. I think those are about 1,000-watt bikes. They still have pedals on it. Looks like, the class 2 bikes. But it's a consideration that we would need to look into, and not put people in situations where they require a driver's license, because I think that's part of the reason why some adults have actually engaged in e-bikes, is because they probably cannot drive a vehicle at this time. So I think we need to take all those things into consideration, and maybe walk it a little bit slower to see what we can do to make the community members safer without taking away, um, what the kids have currently, to not being able to utilize what they have already purchased. So that's really all I have to say about it.
Thank you. Trustee Mustafa.
There've been so many good comments that I've come up with a recommendation. No. first, I love the idea of education. I'm an education person. I think for adults and children, for community members, many of us don't even know what the state regulations are for motorized bicycles or anything. So teaching everybody, I think that's definitely where we need to start. And if someone or they purchase for themselves or for their child, then they get additional education that's specific to them. For example, if they have a class 1 or 2 or 3, there's specific education for that type of vehicle. I would like a clear local ordinance to prohibit certain vehicles, e-bikes greater than 750, and the ones that are definitely in the category of dirt bikes, ATVs, go-karts, I would say prohibit those in that category. No sidewalks for any e-bikes downtown. We've redesigned our sidewalks in the downtown for people to linger, to sit, to frequent our businesses, to enjoy being downtown. So I would recommend no sidewalk usage for any e-bikes downtown.
So the
If I
e-bikes would
may.
also be already prohibited. It would just be for the additional one for the e-scooter, because the e-scooter would need an additional call. Is that what you're referring to,
Yes,
Trustee
well,
Mustafa?
no, that's a clarification, so I would go with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And just because I've heard that a couple of times from trustee Daggett as well as trustee Rogers, class 1 and class 2 cannot be allowed on sidewalks. It is only on streets.
And that's from the state of Illinois. And it's class
Yeah. one,
1, 2, and 3 for
Right.
e-bikes. All the
But-
e-bikes, yeah.
But class 3 is already at age 16. So
Correct.
by not setting an age, whatever that age number is, you are saying an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, whatever age therefore permitted to be on the streets on these vehicles.
Well, to the state of
Well,
Illinois.
they would
permit.
have to be on the
Scary.
wouldn't they have to be on the street with their bicycle?
No, a regular bicycle?
They could ride on the sidewalk with a regular bicycle?
Correct.
Well, I still recommend not being on the, here's my rationale for that. And this is because of my experience within the last 2 weeks with an e-bike. I was driving east on Hawthorne because it takes Hawthorne to get to Sterling, to go to north to Flossmoor Road. And I stopped at the stop sign and looked both ways and saw not a vehicle, not a person walking. And as I began to pull off, from my left, they were going south on Levitt or south on Douglas, I'm not sure. Out of nowhere comes this e-bike. Now, did this young person come out of a driveway? Were they speeding from, and they blew right through the stop sign. Now, did they look to the left or right to see if I was there? No. And fortunately, because I hadn't gained any speed and I don't drive fast on Hawthorne anyway, I just stopped and looked and I thought, that's an accident. Because if some of our business people, some of our landscape folks, some of our delivery trucks, our mail, mail, UPS, Amazon, they're trying to make a schedule. And there was just enough time for me to stop, but not enough time for a speeding vehicle to miss that young person. So for that reason, I definitely want to educate about the state regulations. I want a clear ordinance for the higher powered vehicles. My Vitamix is over 1,000 watts, so my Vitamix can't be on the street. No sidewalks for any e-bikes downtown, just because you can't, it doesn't stop for the class 2 when you stop pedaling. So you'd be going 20 miles an hour, might be moving into a group of people.
Yeah, and that's the same clarification before. So the e-bikes 1 and 2 by the state
Right.
law can't be on the
Yeah,
sidewalks.
so I just would
So,
like
yeah.
to
Thank you.
emphasize it. I would like consistency, if possible, as much as possible between Flossmoor and Homewood. And then, of course, contiguous or touching municipalities, but definitely between Flossmoor and Homewood, especially since the boundaries are not always evident. And there's a lot of travel back and forth between the two municipalities. I'd like no e-bike category 3 in parks at all. 28 miles an hour going through a park is going to change the quality of using the park for
On the
residents.
And again, though, class, all of the e-bikes are only allowed on streets. They're not allowed on sidewalks. And any regulations with respect to the e-scooters are going to be for parks are going to be determined by the park district, not by the village.
I'm just throwing out a consideration that I would like to see happen.
okay.
Flossmoor, because we don't have bike lanes, that's a special discussion that we have to think about, especially when you can't use a vehicle where it's 30, over 35 miles an hour. If we don't have a bike lane and there's a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit, we have to think about how we write anything for that. Because we can't say you can be on Governor's Highway if you're not supposed to be on a thoroughfare that's over 30 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I think that was sorry, I was a bunch of words I just said without any English. What I think we were getting at too in some of our conversations is that some municipalities have limited that or kind of had those conversations. Some of them have left it to the same rules that regular bikes have on those thoroughfares in those different places. So if you're like in a bike club, for example, and you're with 12 other bikes and you're driving, no one's going to pull over that one e-bike and be like, no, you're not in the bike
No,
club.
this is just a consideration. Plainfield has on
Yes.
roadways less
Yeah.
than I don't know. I did a chart, Jonathan.
Yeah, of course, but thank you.
So I just think that that's something that warrants additional discussion. And I advocate for no age restriction. Or if we do, that those who currently have one of these vehicles at the time the ordinance is approved are grandfathered. It's not unusual. I know Trustee Daggett talked about not wanting to impose on anyone who's already purchased it, but it's not unusual to grandfather ordinances. And those young people will be of that age eventually. So even if they got an e-bike at the age of 12, they will eventually be 15 if we would set that restriction. So I would recommend just grandfathering anyone who has an existing e-bike and not shy away from setting a rule because somebody might have bought one for Christmas, just establishing clearly what the age restriction is and grandfathering them. Those are my comments.
And what about local ordinance for enforcement purposes?
I started with that saying, yes, definitely. The faster vehicles, the higher power, definitely, absolutely. Dirt bikes, ATVs, is that what you're referring to?
Local ordinances for dealing with violations versus sending folks to Cook County.
No, we would have a local ordinance, even to include fines and consequences for parents.
Mhm. Thank you. Trustee Mitros.
I'm just seeing dollar bills out the window with, we have to grandfather this in or have an ordinance here or there. I think of Mies van der Rohe and his famous line about architecture, less is more. I am more of a less is more person here. These are here to stay. And I think maybe we need some more discussion about it. But I don't want our officers hauling in 12-year-olds. They don't, our officers don't have enough time to do that. I want, and I applaud Carolyn, I want some parental involvement here, some personal responsibility for these vehicles. If we see something that's outlandish, then we stop them, maybe call their parents. But I don't know what Jonathan said. Was it Deerfield who's kind of got a less is more policy too in terms of
Yeah.
how I like that approach. I don't want to get heavy handed
Well,
here.
they didn't change, Deerfield didn't change the age requirements from the state, but
Yeah.
they required, um, h-
And I don't want to be
helmets for
pulling
those,
these kids into adjudication court here either, really. I think, I think, I think we need time to let this simmer. Uh, Parental responsibility, maybe education on our part, maybe enlisting the bike purveyors within a certain area and saying, you know, like at Prairie State, they teach you how to ride a motorcycle. Maybe we need to have some clinics on how to properly teach a kid how to do an e-bike and show them the helmets and have some gear there that they can buy it. You'd probably sell a bunch, but they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. And I just don't want to overly complicate it because we can enforce it. And if we do try and do that, that's all our cops will be doing. And I'd rather them be making traffic stops and doing a lot of other things. Dirt bikes, ATVs, go-karts, electric scooters. No motorized vehicle should be on the sidewalks in downtown Flossmoor. If it's got a motor on it, get off the sidewalk. So and also we should have a prohibition against those vehicles in town. I mean, I've nearly killed myself many a times when I was a kid on little mini bikes. And, you know, thank God I'm still sitting here, but I mean, I probably have brain damage. Let's see, what else? So that's kind of, the one thing I want to mention too, that we need to outlaw is motorized unicycles, because for whatever reason, when I'm in the city of Chicago and I see one of those darn things going down the street, they're not on sidewalks, they're driving down the street at 30 and 40 miles an hour. I nearly wrecked my car trying to get a video of it because I'm so amazed. So motorized unicycles must also be outlawed in the city of Flossmoor. Have you never seen one?
no, I have
Oh
not.
my God.
I didn't know that was an
It's-
issue.
It's
Noted.
something.
We need
And-
an ordinance against people taking video as they're.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I'm guilty of that. So that's kind of where I stand. We have to be lock, solid, sure on our liability. So we have some more work to do with Irma, which you mentioned. And, you know, I just think all these things, but, you know, we've just got to move forward slowly. And I think personally, less is more. We can't have an ordinance that we can't enforce.
Where do you put a motor on a unicycle?
They're not,
She
they're
pulled it
not,
up.
they're not like a tall, like circus style unicycle.
No,
It's more like a
just one
hoverboard.
wheel and they're sitting on.
It's
them
more like a
and man,
hoverboard.
George,
I'd
30.
take a picture of that too, so. don't worry.
They're going like, they're 30, 40 miles an hour, just flat
Mhm.
out. They're dead if they get hit by anything, but, so that's where I am on it.
Thank you. Trustee Lofton.
Well, one of the benefits of going last in this discussion is that you learn a lot, and I want to thank my cohorts here for educating me on something that yesterday I had no clue we'd be talking about. So thank you for that. And I do have some thoughts on it. I listened to the young mother talking about a 13-year-old. It sounds like he's riding a class 2. I don't know, but she says he wants to have fun. And I want him to have fun also, but safely, of course. And I listened to Mr. Hokema, is it? I didn't butcher your name, did I? But these things are selling. I mean, it's happening. But, you know, so we got to do something. And clearly, we need to consider an ordinance on managing this issue, because it's happening now, and it sounds like it's going to get pretty big. I made some notes here. Focus on education. It occurs to me in listening to the last 45, 50 minutes on this that there are probably, I'd say maybe 50% of the bikes that are out there now have not ever looked at the rules of the road. Close. So we have to be strong and work on that. And downtown, no motorized vehicles on the sidewalk. That doesn't make sense. I'm not too pleased with the fact that we've spent all this money to beautify our downtown, that folks are riding circles in the streets and with motorized vehicles or scooters or anything like that. So we need to be careful in our discussion about how we waltz through that. There should be some age restrictions, but it sounds like we're all over the place from municipality to municipality and the state. So we should talk about that, but I'm listening to 8-year-olds. I'm listening to our trustee who has a whole family riding up from 8 years old on up to her husband. Um, that only tells me that it can be done safely, but you have to have some education. We have to make sure that sort of thing happens. So um, we need to consider an ordinance for sure. I know you're going to ask me where am I on this. Helmets for sure. My 5-year-old granddaughter has a bicycle that she rides on the street with a helmet on. And I think kids like that, especially the girls. So we need to consider that as something that we stand on. And, you know, the 1,000-watt, 100-horsepower scooters and go-karts and all that, forget about that. You know, we don't need to tolerate that, do we? You know, that would be the extent of my discussion on that, quite frankly. I don't want to see Chief and his people out there chasing these folks around with those things. Like, that doesn't make sense. So I don't know if I answered all of the questions and what you'd like to see from us, but
What about local ordinance rather than handing this over to a higher court? What about dealing with any infractions at a local level?
you know, we're a small village. I think we can handle our own. I'd like to see our stamp on something like that. Yes.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great presentation. Appreciate, again, all of your work on this. We do not need to go into executive session tonight, so I'm going to call for other business, starting with Trustee Mustafa.
So I don't want to beat the topic, but one thing that I want to stress is that many of our conversations lately, we've stressed safety. We stress safety in the events that we have, safety in everything we do. So regarding any kind of pen to paper to come up with ordinances for electric vehicles, whether they be 20 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, 28 miles an hour, I know that safety will be uppermost in our minds. Because it could involve the fire department too, not just our police department or EMTs. And that's my final comment on that. Whatever we do, whether it be helmet discussions or restrictions, that safety is uppermost.
Thank you, Trustee Mitros. Thank you, Trustee Lofton.
No more.
Thank you, Trustee Dorsey. Thank you, Trustee Daggett.
Just a quick thank you to Chief Estelle and the police department. I know you guys are doing some grant enforcement for traffic stops. A lot of people in the community have seen officers with cars pulled over giving citations. They've expressed that they really are pleased with that because of all the discussions we've had about traffic issues in the village. So thank you for going after those grants, putting those grants in place. And I know the officers enjoy the overtime as well. So it's good all around. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rogers.
Oh, I was gonna say thanks for letting me participate in today's meeting. But I did want to make sure that we classify the class 3 bikes, because the class 3 bikes are the ones that go over 750 watts, and that's the one that currently does have the age limit. So I just want to make sure we all understand the difference between a class 1, 2, and 3 bike. Because like I said, I also have a class 3. That's the one my husband has. And that's the one that most adults are actually riding. So if we're talking about banning those bikes, the class 3 that the state currently has at 16, that's going to be something that we would really need to look
So
at.
Trustee Rogers, that's class 3 is not something that we're looking at banning. Those are 750 watts. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's class 3 bikes are already regulated by the state of Illinois. We're talking about the 750 watt plus. I don't know if that's looking at bikes that are, it's usually above 30 miles per hour is what those bikes, e-bikes can go with the e-motos. Yeah. So they're more
Those are
like motorcycles than electric motorcycles than anything else. But we would not be making any kind of recommendation against class 3 bikes that are already covered by the state of Illinois.
gotcha. Okay. Nope, that clears it up for me. That's what I was wanting to make sure I understood it. Okay. Well, other than that, there's nothing else I have to say, but thanks everybody for like I said, allowing me to participate. And thanks again to uh, the village and the staff for your service.
Thank you. Clerk Porter,
Sorry, I have no comments. Thank you.
Village Attorney, thank you so much for sitting in, by the way, tonight.
Glad
you
to
guys
be
are
here.
stretched a little thin tonight, and
We're good.
looking forward to seeing Joe back, but it's always good to have you and appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Like to be here whenever I'm needed. I'll be here. Couple of things that we will also probably want you to consider as I thought about this as I was listening to you. Is there an age at which you would allow someone to have a passenger? I don't know. You know, I can remember as a kid riding a bike with somebody in the handlebars and somebody standing up in the back. So, you know, it was a family vehicle. But do you want to have that with a e-bike going 20 to 28 miles an hour? I don't know. That's just something that maybe we can look at. Is there a maximum number of passengers? And where can they sit? I believe.
They're piling them on.
Yeah. And I'm pretty certain that class 3 is still 750 watts or less. Yeah. Okay.
1,000.
So if it's above that, it is not classified and defined as an e-bike under state law. So the ordinance would have definitions going along with the states. And one of the things we're talking about is, you know, what can you do with something that's greater than 750 watts? And we're wanting parents to understand that those are not street legal under Illinois law. So if you're going to buy them, you better have private property that can accommodate them. And I think that's one of the messages that the village is wanting to get out in the holiday season where people might be buying these. So that's all I have. And thank you.
Thank you. Village Manager. All right. 2 quick invites. One on November 20th. The South Suburban Archaeological Society is giving a presentation on the Horton site, which was the farmer's land just south of Butterfield Creek along Brookwood Drive. My robotics team is doing a study on archaeology as well and has been studying this site intensely. They're going to be there as part of the presentation, and Flossmoor History is also aiding in that. I've got a box of arrowheads that were actually discovered on the Horton site in the 1940s. So if you want to stop by and take a look at these, pretty cool. These were gifted to Flossmoor History by Dick Condon, who is the head of the Flossmoor Veterans Wall of Honor group. And then on Sunday, November 3rd at 7 p.m., our annual community Thanksgiving gathering. So hope to see you all there. It's at All Nations Church, which is just north and across the street from HF High School. Their choir performs annually, and it's just an exquisite evening, bringing folks together from all faiths.
Would you repeat that date, please, again?
Sunday, November 23rd at 7 p.m. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Hi.
opposed? Have a great night. Thank you for coming out, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, no worries, man. Enjoy. Thanks. Enjoy.